Courtney King from Montana. Welcome to Stay Paid.
I would love to hear from you, Courtney. We have the broke agent on. We have the great Eric Simon. I would love to hear from you, your question to try to help you grow your business, all things social content. We have the master on. What question can we help you with to help you grow?
I started a podcast last year with 4 complimentary other gals in similar industries. So we cover a lot of life lessons and discuss all those things. So my question was, how do I grow that podcast audience?
Great. How do you grow? Eric, what do you think, man? Because you have a couple of successful podcasts and a successful media company. What would your reaction be?
I'll start with some bad news, if that's okay, Courtney.
Yeah.
Growing a podcast is very difficult and takes an enormous amount of time. And even on some of our BAM podcasts, we have plateaued just because the real estate agent audience is so small. I love the storytelling angle that could get you outside of the real estate space, but something that's been extremely successful for us when we're framing up our podcast is coming up with the title and the YouTube thumbnail before you actually record the podcast. That really helps frame up everything that you're talking about, and then takes out a lot of the guesswork after the episode. Because I know after these podcast episodes, Luke and Josh know this too, is you're editing, you're trying to come up with the perfect title based off of what everybody said. You're trying to match that thumbnail to that title. It's very time consuming. And then you end up kind of losing the essence of the actual episode. But when you frame up the title and the thumbnail beforehand, you're giving yourself that framework to actually have a better episode. And you're already setting yourself up for success because you know kind of what's going to get clicks, whether it's through YouTube or through Spotify. Another way to do it is, are you recording short form clips after it? Are you publishing clips on social?
No, that's a good idea. We have somebody that helps with editing and loading it. So they do all the YouTube stuff.
Yes.
But doing the short clips would probably be helpful.
Yeah, it's very hard to get discovered on the podcast platforms, just publishing something through Anchor and then hoping people discover it on Spotify or YouTube. Then it's very title based, right? Like if you're not publishing short form content, people aren't even going to know the podcast really exists. And most people now are consuming the short form content even more than the podcast itself. So the clips might actually, they could definitely get more views to the actual podcast, but that might help with your branding more than the actual podcast itself, because we could have a short form clip that gets 30, 40,000 views and the podcast itself only gets 1,500. So what I would do is, while you're actively filming the podcast, is try to come up with 4 or 5 questions before that could be great hooks for those short form clips. Because whenever I used to do the Overask podcast, or whenever I'm doing the walkthrough podcast, and I could find myself kind of stumbling over my words, then I try to reform or reformat the actual hook to the question to make it more deliberate, knowing that there's going to be a short form clip out of it. Because those clips are just as important, if not more, than the podcast itself to drive more views to the podcast.
Super well said. Some things we've seen with Stay Paid. We have seen that your audience grows the largest when you interview other people with audiences. So, for you in your podcast, right, you have your lender, insurance person, attorney. Make sure, just from a basic standpoint, you have an email created that can go to all of their databases. So after you create the actual content that Eric's talking about, that's gold. Then make sure you make it easy for them to send out to their list. So make sure that cross-marketing is happening. And then think about guest-wise. There's so many good guests probably in your community that you could bring on that have an audience, and you just need to make sure you do the work with that short form clip where you are tagging, you are collaborating with them in order to try to grow your audience. That's one thing that's helped us a ton. We had Matt Holleran on, and Matt runs Proudmouth, which is a podcasting agency. So he's produced about 1,000 shows.
Oh, yeah. I thought he said like 10,000.
It might have been 10,000. It's nuts. I mean, this guy's a master at podcasting. Yeah. He gave us an interesting benchmark, which was basically, how do you know if your podcast is doing well audience-wise? He said what he has seen from running podcasts for all these advisors and different service-based businesses, if your listener, like your viewership or listeners, reach is about the level of your sphere database. So if you have 200 people in your database and you're getting 200 listens per episode, you're doing really well from a podcasting standpoint, from what he has seen running thousands of shows. So that's a good benchmark for you, because a podcast like yours, it could, I'm not saying it wouldn't, it could go national, but more than likely it's always going to be decently small. And so it's like, well, how do I gauge the return here? Two ways we do it with Stay Paid is we think about our overall database of people and client base and what's our viewership compared to that. And then we also think about the relationships we're building with the guest that we bring on. Hence, Eric here, we formed a whole partnership with BAM literally from our relationship started on the podcast, where we, got to know Eric through the podcast, and then it translated to a whole relationship together. So those are two things to think about from a podcasting standpoint. I don't know if you would add anything.
What's
Josh?
the name of your podcast, Courtney?
Prosperity Playbook.
Prosperity Playbook.
We're on Spotify and YouTube.
That's awesome. Let's send some audience to Courtney.
Yeah, go. And then remember, you can use AI to help you develop all these hooks that Eric is talking about. I don't know, Eric, are you guys using AI to help you develop the hooks yet or no?
Not to develop the hooks. I know which guest I'm talking to beforehand. I look at their content, whether it's the walkthrough or formally over ask, and basically come up with 3 or 4. And the hook should take 3 or 4 seconds. Just quick question. And then the person on the other end answers it, and then you give a call to action at the end. One thing also that's really effective, Courtney, is to use something like a mini chat automation to get more clicks to your podcast through your short form content. So on Instagram, if you say comment the word and then you give a specific word, like comment the word podcast, and then you could send them a DM link directly to your podcast. So you're driving direct traffic from the short form clip to the podcast is kind of a teaser. And then making sure you plug it in your Instagram story, on your Facebook, and in your newsletter, just like Luke and Josh said. So the more views you're going to get are going to be from your social channels that are already in existence, as opposed to just trying to grow the podcast audience organic with the best YouTube title and thumbnails. That's really effective. But you got to use the audience at your disposal first to get the initial eyeballs.
I know one mistake we made with our podcast, and probably still suffer from it today, is we went really broad, Courtney, in our persona we were going after. We basically were going after every entrepreneur and every, we can maybe label it, we went after every service-based. And then content-wise, it was motivation, it was, entrepreneurship, it was personality. Like, we didn't get focused for many, many years. And that really hurt us in a couple of ways. One, it hurt us in developing the content, because the content became very generic and broad and not specific enough to resonate with people. And then it hurt us in terms of like guest, is like we were getting so many different guests from so many different industries, and it never really built a tribe. To this day, Stay Paid is a decently popular show across the industry, but it is not nearly as good as it probably could have been if we would have developed a tribe by being way more niche in the beginning and getting loyal listeners within that tribe and then breaking out. And we fell to the classic mistake of we tried to reach everybody, and so therefore reached basically nobody from a tribe perspective, and then slowly switched after School of Hard Knocks. So I would just encourage you, your podcast, think about who are you trying to talk to, and try to get specific in that, and then go and develop these topics for that specific audience. And then that will lead you to the guest, and that will lead you to the hooks.
Yeah.
Like that's
I'm looking at your page right now, and number one, branding looks awesome. The thumbnails are fantastic. The one thing I would tell you would be your titles. So like, for example, your most recent podcast, if I'm looking at the right one, the Prosperity Playbook, is Housing Crisis, episode 15. That doesn't say who it's speaking to. That doesn't say what are we talking about with the housing crisis. That gives no sort of context to the person who's just on YouTube seeing thumbnails pop up, because the thumbnails look great. Your titles, I would want you to run through AI, do more testing with the various titles, get more information in there, not just for SEO, but also for context. And then make sure that all 3 of you are blasting this out to your entire your entire database. So your email list, make sure each week you're getting that episode out and why people should be listening to it based on who you're actually targeting with your episodes. But you're like, out of the 3 things that you need, branding, thumbnail, titles, you've got 2 of them.
Yeah, your branding looks awesome. Like the imagery and stuff like that looks fantastic. I can't wait to listen. Courtney, thank you for coming on the show. Hopefully that helps. Friend us if you haven't already on Instagram. We'd love to connect
Friend
and help
us.
you more.
What are you, insane? Do you mean shoot a follow request? What is this, 1996?
He's in MySpace.
Add him on AIM. Courtney,
Eric, I need friends, dude. I need friends in my life.
Add us on MySpace. One last thing, results-driven titles always really work for us, especially on the walkthrough. Whenever we say something like, this agent gained 50,000 subscribers from this YouTube strategy. Anytime you could put a numerical value in your thumbnail or your title, and it's results-driven, and people understand why I'm listening to this episode, that's when we find ourselves getting the most clicks.
So good.
Great. I wrote down lots of notes.
All right, Courtney,
Awesome.
friend me, Courtney, because I need a friend. Ignore Eric and Josh, you know what I mean? But, follow them if you want to. No, really appreciate you coming on.
Become pen pals,
Exactly.
I'll send you a carrier pigeon.
I'll see you on AOL Instant Messenger.